I'm Linda Nelson. I'm the Executive Director of VisNet, and I'm here to talk with you about disruptive change. Now that I have your attention, let's chat for a few minutes about disruptive change and what the post office can teach our schools. Let's start by looking at John Dewey, who many call the father of modern education. John Dewey's words are almost prophetic. He says, "If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow." He continues, "The world is moving at a tremendous rate. No one knows where. We must prepare our children, not for the world of the past, not for our world, but for their world, the world of the future." John Dewey said those words 73 years ago, but they are just as relevant today. There's always been a disconnect between what happens in our schools and what happens in the real world. The difference between 1940 and today, however, is the rapid pace with which technology is changing our world. It's harder to keep up than ever, we all know that, and the gap between what's happening in schools and what's happening in real life is widening at an exponential rate. It's pure and simple. We have entered a new era, and it's an era of disruption. It's a game changer. You may have heard the term disruptive innovation. Michael Horn and Clay Christensen wrote a book called Disrupting Class that talks about the impact that this phenomenon is having on education today. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. So what is disruptive innovation? It's any time a new technology or new way of doing something comes along and so significantly disrupts the old way that the new way takes over and the old way becomes obsolete. Let me say it again. It's any time a new technology or new way of doing something comes along and so significantly disrupts the old way that the new way takes over and the old way becomes obsolete. The interesting thing about disruptive innovation is it's nothing new. It's been around for quite a while. One of the earliest forms of disruptive innovation was the wheel. Before the wheel, people carried things. They walked along on foot. After the wheel, they were able to roll things along. It made life a whole lot easier. There are a zillion other disruptive innovations that we can point to. The telephone, the telegraph, the television, fiber optic cable, the internet, the cell phone, on and on and on and on. All of these are very concrete examples, and they're all tied to a particular invention. So I can understand that it might be a little bit hard to relate any of these to what's going on in education today. I have one example, however, that I think you'll find much more relevant, and you may by now have guessed what that is. It's the post office. Who would have ever thought 25 years ago that the post office would be struggling to survive today? Yet, due to its failure to take advantage of technological advances, it is. Think for a minute about the impact of email, text, cell phones, online bill pay, e-cards, and FedEx on communication and delivery of communication materials. In one way or another, all of these have chipped away at the long-standing institution that we know as the post office. Why? Because they provided a better option, an option that is either easier, faster, cheaper, more reliable, or maybe a combination of all of those things. We definitely don't want our schools to become the post office. And the good news is that they don't have to. This is not rocket science. As we talked about earlier, disruptive innovation has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And interestingly, each and every time it follows the same pattern of adoption. It's called the innovation adoption curve, and it looks like this. Let's think about it in education terms. At the far left, we have the 2.5%ers, the innovators. These folks pride themselves on being on the cutting edge of technology. They're the ones who stood in line for hours waiting for the first iPhone, not knowing if they were going to like it or not knowing if they even needed it, but just knowing that they wanted to have the latest and the greatest. The next 13.5% are the early adopters. They fall into one of two categories. They either have a need and are looking for a solution. Maybe they're a small school with a need for more APs, or a larger school that has some challenging scheduling issues. They may also be schools whose missions and values embrace progressive education and innovation, and those schools just naturally seek out ways to stay on the cutting edge. It's just who they are. Then we jump the chasm. We have the early majority. Many of your schools may be in this category. They join BizNet, they may dabble in a few resources, but for the most part, they're watching and waiting. They don't want to miss out. They want a seat at the table, but they don't want to take the risk of jumping in too early. While it would be nice to move these folks along a little quicker, they're eventually going to get there. The ones we're really worried about, however, are the other two columns there, the majority, the late majority, and the laggards. These represent our well-established schools with waiting lists and happy parents. Their students are doing well on SATs and APs, and they're getting into their college of choice. Life is good. Why change? You know what? I'll just bet in its heyday the post office asked the same thing, as probably did Blockbuster Video. I would ask you, where does your school fall along the adoption curve? It's something to think about. Hopefully this short video has been helpful. The next move is yours. BizNet is here to help. We hope that you'll call on us. We have 3+ years of experience and best practices, a variety of resources, and we're only a call away. We're here to support your school. Thank you.